How's everybody doing today? Doing awesome? Good? All right. So, quick thing about the M&Ms. There's nothing sinister going on. I just wanted to be friendly and give everybody M&Ms. Actually, there's actually research showing that if you're going to be sitting for a while and you're going to be taking in a ton of information, people have about 20 minutes worth. And after 20 minutes or so, you either need to take a break or have something to eat because you're burning through a lot of glucose, especially when you're learning and taking in information about things that you may not be completely comfortable with. So that's what they're there for. So if I start going over 20 minutes, start to dig in on the M&Ms. There's more in the back if you need them. All right, so I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. Okay, my name is Dewald. I'm at the University of Utah. And I'm the Associate Director for the Center for Innovation and Legal Education that we have there. It's a brand new center. We have provisional approval. We're trying to get permanent approval. And in the course of permanent approval is why I'm here presenting to you and making some of our projects now. Perhaps more relevant to the topic of this presentation is I'm in my fifth year of PhD studies in learning science. Okay. I'm in, as I said, learning science. My advisor is Dr. Christian Butcher. And what we study are learning through visual representations. And those can be anything from things like concept maps, mind maps, outlines, to multimedia, which is a big portion of what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is really neat, right? In my academic life, I get to go read all this theory and take classes and read, right? Theory. But then I get to go to the law school, and I get to treat it like my lab. I get to experiment on the law professors, and I get to experiment on the law students. And the faculty actually don't mind. In fact, they're very supportive of what it is that I'm doing. I've been there for 10 years. They've known me first as a web developer, and now they know me as somebody that they can come to if they want to know theory or talk about maybe ways to improve their classroom. Now, I've learned over time that the theory sometimes suggests one thing, and then you try to go and implement it in practice, and what does it do? It blows up right in your face, right? So there's always some fudging with this stuff. So some of my presentation here, and I'm more than happy to answer some of the questions about what we've learned that the theory does work with and what it doesn't work with. So here's what we're going to go through for today's presentation. First, I'm sure all of you are well-versed on what flipped classrooms or blended learning is, but I'm just going to get a basic foundation understanding of what it is so we're all on the same page. So when I'm using terminology, it all makes sense to you. Second, actually parts 2 and 3 are going to be about theory. Okay? We're going to talk about depth of comprehension, which is more generally applicable to teaching and learning. We're going to talk a little bit about what we want for our learners. What are our objectives as educators? And I'm also trying to lay the groundwork for how flipped classrooms actually do work, for what purpose, and what should they be doing. And then hopefully you'll be convinced of that, and then we'll talk about multimedia theory, right? I feel very strongly about this. If we're going to flip classrooms, and we're going to start doing all this stuff online, there's a ton of research out there in multimedia theory. How do people learn through basically online videos? How do people learn through multimedia? And we're going to talk a little bit about, I can talk all day just on that topic, but I'm going to talk about 2 principles that are very important to consider if you're responsible for or supervising the creation of these blended learning videos. Part 4 is actually very technical. At the College of Law, we've got a really cool series on contracts and critical thinking and evidence and all that stuff. Some of you may have seen it. The number one question I get asked is, how do you make them? So I'm going to go through our 5-step process of how we make those videos. And it's not super complex. It's actually using some software that you might have on your iPads or your laptops today. And then finally, the whole reason why I want to present this and show you is I want to tell you about a project that we have called the FirstYear. The FirstYear.org is the website. You can check it out right now if you want. It's where all of our multimedia is going, where all of our assessments are going. It's our place for first-year courses, flipping them, and getting the students comfortable with their first year of law school. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about what is a flipped classroom. So flipped classroom, to really understand it, we're going to back up and talk about blended learning, right? So blended learning is really this umbrella term, and it means anything that combines face-to-face classroom methods, right, like we are right here, talking, visiting, with computer-mediated activities, something on a computer or something like one. Okay, now what is that? It could be intelligent tutoring systems. There's a lot of research in how students can use like geometry tutors to help coach them through complex geometry or other mathematics. Duolingo. Has anybody used Duolingo before? Anybody? It's a foreign language learning system, and I've heard some K through 12 foreign language teachers will assign things from Duolingo to their students. And it's also things like chemistry games, right, on the iPad. Something that gamifies chemistry. All of these things are blended learning because we're taking what we do in the classroom and combining it with something on the computer. Now, the flipped classroom is a derivative of that, right? Basically, the idea of a flipped classroom is what's normally done passively on the part of the learner in classroom, right? Lectures, information intake, information transfer, gaining information. That's actually put. There we go. It's put on the computer and assigned as homework. So students, typically this is in the format of recording lectures and putting the lectures online and letting the students watch them there as homework, where the idea is that they come to class and we do more active learning. But as you'll find out, hopefully, it doesn't always have to be about lectures, but the idea is the same. So ultimately what that does is that the in-class time is much more productive, right? It's constructive, it's interactive. They're not passively sitting, listening to me talk. I would have flipped this if I could have, but I didn't know who was going to be here and couldn't send you the emails. But I wanted to draw your attention to Mickey Chi. Now I have a sister presentation that's basically the other side of the coin. Mickey Chi does a lot of work. Mickey Chi from Arizona State University does a lot of work with active learning and how we can facilitate deeper comprehension through active learning. And I have a presentation all about that. It will be on YouTube probably in July. Actually, this presentation is on YouTube right now. So if you have to step out, although I'll be taking names, or you know of somebody that would benefit from seeing this, it's on YouTube right now. You can get to it from the course page for this Cali presentation. The slides are there too if you want to take a look at the slides. So you can go do that. Also my contact information. I wanted to use the chalkboard, so I put my name and stuff on there. Okay, so the idea, right, is that by flipping the class or by utilizing the online portion, you can potentially have some time to make the classroom more engaging, more constructive, and more interactive. Now, this is an interesting quote. So everybody, a lot of people have heard of Clay Christensen. I think if you remember Michelle Stone's presentation yesterday, she brought it up. And he's really known as sort of disruption, and he wrote this book about education, which is actually really good. It's a few years old, but it's still really good. And he says, by 2019, 50% of all high school courses are going to be delivered online. That's crazy. That's 2019 is like 5 years away. Holy crap. And he wrote this in 2008. Now, believe it or not, I mean, whatever you think of Professor Christensen, he can be polarizing sometimes. In 2019, the seniors are potentially our law students. And whether it's 50% or 20%, 30%, whatever the case is, they are our future law students. How are they learning? What methods are they using? What are the professors? I have a friend who went to go pick up his daughter from class in kindergarten, and they had the word metacognition on the wall. That's crazy! Kids in metacognition? Yeah, but you know what? They're law students, and how many law professors really know a ton about metacognition? Their students will, especially if they're in that kindergarten class. So I'm saying that we really do need to kind of understand where these students are coming from. They're using things like Minecraft. They're using things like Duolingo. And what can we do to sort of meet them halfway in terms of getting them ready and talking about law school? Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit theoretical here. I'll keep it nice and light, though. We're going to talk about depth of comprehension, because a lot of it, really, any of these educational innovations, anything we want to do, is done for a reason, right? The goal of education is to have our students, let our students have a more developed structure of knowledge. That's what we want for them, right? Ultimately, this translated is, we want to minimize the shallow learning that these students do. the techniques. It's necessary, which we'll talk about in a second, but we want to minimize that. We want to maximize the deep comprehension, the deeper activities that help reinforce this stuff. Well, Professor Kinch and Van Dyke wrote this paper in 1983, and Dr. Kinch wrote follow-up. It's actually really, really technical, but if any of this tickles your fancy, I'd recommend reading it. This idea of depth of comprehension is more or less two levels, right? So shallow comprehension. Shallow comprehension is necessary, but we don't want our students to really linger using these techniques. Shallow comprehension, when students are engaging in this, they get inert, unconnected knowledge, right? They're rote, it's memorization, they're cramming, right? It's inflexible, they learn it as it is. I could learn a poem in German and recite it back to you. I don't know German, right? I couldn't tell you if this word is that word or whatever the case is. And that means it's transient. I took torts when I was 2 years ago as part of my PhD studies. And I did it. I knew full well that it was a horrible way to study, but cramming and going into the exam, hoping you remember just as much as possible that you can spit it out or pick something out of a multiple choice selection or anything like that, right? These techniques and shallow comprehension is typically done passively. It's them sitting at their computer, typing away as you talk. It's them, sometimes reading or cramming, taking notes in terms of writing some things down. As I mentioned, these are necessary because students need to get information in some way, but we don't want them to stay there, and we don't want them to think that this works all the time. We want them to be developing a deeper comprehension. What is a deeper comprehension? This is where students integrate it into their prior knowledge, and that's a huge thing, right? We need students to, one, develop their prior knowledge, right? A lot of these students are novices. I was a novice in torts. I thought torts was a French pastry, right? I had no idea what was going on, and I needed some sort of prior knowledge that I could attach incoming information to. And that process of developing prior knowledge and attaching it is a hallmark of deep comprehension. And prior knowledge will predict whether or not they can achieve deep comprehension. The cool thing is it's flexible and reusable, right? If you learn something and you learn it deeply, you can start to see similarities. You can start to infer. You can transfer it, although transfer is difficult. You can transfer it to other situations and other scenarios, right? You see similarities. Maybe you learn something in contracts, and then you say, oh, this is kind of like that in torts. I'm just pulling another but right, so there's similarities that they're going to start to see, and when you have a deep comprehension of something, you're able to make those connections, and you're able to learn it at that level. It's stable and permanent, meaning that I'm not going to forget it after the test, after I have that adrenaline dump. I'm going to remember it for year 2, year 3, and in practice. And as Mickey Chi talks about a lot of her research, deep comprehension can really be obtained when it's done actively. Right? When you're doing something, not just writing down or typing, although that is active, it's a much lower level than construction and integration and interaction with other students. Right? So you're all convinced, shallow learning, though necessary, it's not where we want them to be. We want them to be engaged in deep comprehension. So how do we know? It seems abstract. How do we know what deep is and what shallow is and what some of these activities are? Who knows what this is? Yeah, speed, awesome. Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy, although it's simple and it's great for this sort of stuff, to understand what sort of things should we be doing to encourage deep learning or shallow learning. Come on. One more. There we go. So when you look at Bloom's taxonomy, it kind of gives you this really cool rubric for how we can begin to understand what's shallow, what's deep, and what we should be doing. At the bottom, these are typically shallow or done shallow, right? Remember, understand. I'm going to remember to read something. I'm going to remember it, and some people can actually understand it, right? But when you start getting into apply, can maybe be a little shallow, but analyze, evaluate, create, right? These all require somebody or something to be created and to be evaluated and to interact and to be constructive with something, right? So this is actually a really good model. It's changed. You'll see different versions of Bloom's taxonomy. So if you go out and you Google it, you might see some different versions, but they all have the same idea. And this is how I actually use Bloom's taxonomy. One thing I do want to draw your attention to is the pyramid structure. Now remember, I said shallow is necessary, but we don't want them to linger there. What shallow can do is help build that prior knowledge, that base of the triangle, that base of the pyramid, right? We want them to go up, and you have to go through those. They have to remember and understand the content before they can create anything. So, what does that mean? Information transfer. These are shallow, remember, understand, but these could be done online by the learner. The teacher doesn't need to be there to transfer information. It doesn't need to communicate with them. We know that people can go online and watch YouTube videos and actually get some information transferred, though as hopefully I'll convince you in a second, it's very important how we design those. Right, so let's move these online, because they need to do this. They need that shallow introduction to it. But when it comes to facilitating the deeper understanding, these analyze, create, apply, and evaluate, these are best done in the classroom, where you can actually engage with the students. Right? We can get a small group together. Okay, guys, I want you to do this activity, blah, 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 blah. I walk around, I come back and say, how's it going? I'm interacting. I can answer questions really quickly. Lecture, you guys are all just sitting listening the whole time. There's no chance for that interaction. You're definitely not, applying, analyzing, and creating anything as part of the class. So let's talk about really quickly so hopefully we've talked a little bit about the shallow piece, that we should be moving those online, and we've talked about the activities. Those are the things that should be in the classroom. But you may be thinking, okay, all right, I'm buying it so far. How should I make a video then? How am I going to make this magical video and make it do shallow the best way that it can? Right? How do people process multimedia? How the information is presented in these videos is going to have a huge impact on whether or not they even remember or understand this stuff. So it's really important that as we talk about moving these lectures and stuff online, about moving them into a multimedia environment, that we understand what impact does that video, does that information have on the learner, and how can we optimize that without confusing them or without making a mess of the situation. I'm going to talk about two theories here. As I mentioned, there's a lot of stuff going on with this, but I picked out two that are probably the most relevant for this. And the first one is the dual coding theory, and this is by Dr. Pavio in 1971. So this one's been around a while. Okay? He says that information is processed along two distinct channels. First, you have a verbal channel, and this is the important one. This is what you read or what you hear. Goes in through the ears and sometimes the eyes. And the visual channel, which is what you see. And this is very important. So the idea behind this is that, so basically the idea behind this is that when you take in information through the verbal channel, hearing, and you take in information with what you see, the brain actually has two ways of encoding it. And it's a much more robust encoding of the information. It's much more usable, and it's more easily remembered than if you provide it through just one of the channels alone. Okay? Brain will smush these together. So we have verbal information. So as an aside, verbal information also processes text. So if you're reading, that's actually verbal because you're sounding it out. It uses the same channel. So it's really odd. It's counterintuitive because you're using your eyes, but it's actually verbal. So I can show you the word dog. I can show you a picture of a dog. But according to the dual coding theory, if I do this, you're more likely to remember it than either one alone. So when the verbal and image contents overlap, there are multiple retrieval cues. They can get to it better. It's better encoded. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this with the talking head videos, although I won't get into that yet. Okay? So according to dual coding theory, if we provide these multiple retrieval cues, they're going to remember it a little bit better, much better actually, up to 6 times better to remember something when an image supports what they see or hear. I don't have a citation for this because I forgot to add it, but there's a book called Talk Like TED. Anybody read that yet? It's a really good book. She actually covers how to make a good TED Talk presentation. And she goes everything from the story that you're telling to multimedia theory about how to present information, and it's really good. So how can this idea that learners are 6 times more likely to remember, to build that prior knowledge when they see an image and when they see or hear the words, hopefully that's convincing information for you. But one thing that I want to warn you on The mere fact of smooshing together, is the term smooshing together, right? It's a technical term. It takes brain power. It's cognitive load. I have to be able to take information in through one channel, I take information in through another channel, and in the brain you actually have to have some of that processing power to smoosh it all together, right? So it's very important that as you're designing the multimedia, or you're thinking about what sort of things you're putting in your videos, that you take this into account. And that's why I put the M&Ms out there. It's because that brain consumes tons of glucose. And if you're not replacing it or taking a break and allowing yourself to decompress just a little bit, right, after 40 minutes, which is probably where I'll wind up going, you're going to be, in fact, it's time to start eating some M&Ms. Right? You're going to get a little bit more tired. You're not going to process the information as well. You'll forget some things. Okay? So as you're constructing multimedia, if you're in a technical piece and you're putting things together, just keep this in mind. Keep in mind that you have verbal stuff, yes. You have an audio channel, yes. But ultimately, this has to be constructed, and they have to put it together. And you need a little bit of power for that. Okay, so they have this cognitive load. They have incoming information. They got smushed together in their brains. How can I manage that? What are some things I can keep in mind as I'm designing my slides, or designing my pictures, or designing the videos? What should I be keeping in mind to make sure I'm not going overboard and it's just spilling out of their ears and they're forgetting everything? There's this concept called the redundancy principle. Okay? And this is Richard Mayer. Your relation? Nope. Okay. He's a professor out of California, Santa Barbara, and he's been doing multimedia theory work for a very, very long time. In fact, if you want to read more, I say this, I think the last few presentations I've given here, I've worked this into my presentation. Get this book. If you're responsible for designing multimedia for flipped learning and flipped classrooms, get this book. I'm saving you 2.5 years of a master's program in constructional design, because his stuff here is really, really good. It's actually, the redundancy principle is part of 12 principles. And again, I could spend a whole day talking about multimedia, all 12 multimedia principles, but I think the redundancy principle is a good one to at least to start with. This says that, right, we have a verbal channel, right, information's coming in. Learners integrate the words and images more easily when they're presented auditorily. So narration, not words. Raise your hand if you've seen a slide like this. Yeah, this sucks. This is horrible, right? But people will do this. I mean, some people will put PowerPoints together and narrate them, that's fine. But this is not cool. This is not very good. Right? Okay, right? So, you know, you have a little bit of the visual channel, right? There's the audio, the verbal channel. They got to read this, so you remember we're occupying their verbal channel. And if there's narration and you're reading it to them in the first place, you're totally baking them. They're not going to remember a damn thing. They're going to be busy writing it down, and when you're writing that sort of stuff down, you have no idea what's going on. I see a lot of people taking pictures of this. The slides are on the website.
I'm gonna post.
I'm here.
Tweet it. I know.
Take a picture of me.
But that last bullet point's hysterical. I read that one. No, I didn't.
So you have this design with what most people typically will design with, right? Bullet points, text, part of the IPC. Yeah, crappy. I've taken this and actually put together a better slide. This slide has essentially the same topical information as the previous Chilean import slide. Hey, did we watch the World Cup? How about Chile, huh? Yeah. Okay, anyway. And what I would do is that the bullet points would be my script, and I would read that. I would present it to them auditorily in terms of narration, as opposed to making them read it all, and thinking that I need to pack all of that stuff on there. The images of the cherries, the dollar sign, and the stamp help reinforce that, right? No coding, they're smushing it together, and you're more likely to remember it. In fact, some of our contracts videos have had more than one occasion where a student has come out to me, has said, I took this exam or did this homework or whatever, and I remember the pictures that I saw in the video when from the question. So that's how they recalled it. And I think this would do the same sort of thing for them if they were taking a class on Chilean exports. So, bottom line, minimize the amount of text on your slides, right? Put pictures on there. Present information with your voice instead of on-screen words. Okay, So we should do narration. We should be presenting all that content verbally. All right. How do we optimize it? Well, what should you be saying? What sort of things, what sort of information should you be putting there? Now, I'm going to say that flipping a class isn't always about replacing lectures. And this is, I presented at Syracuse about a month ago, and this was the first thing that came up is I don't lecture. I do Socratic, right? I have no reason to flip because I have no lecture, therefore I don't flip, right? So, flipping a class is about, it can be about prepping the students, right? What do we say about comprehension? They need to have a base level of knowledge. So maybe instead of flipping a class just to put lectures online, it's about preparing the students to be better, more productive in the classroom when we're engaging in Socratic dialogue. Maybe it's, in fact, I think I have it on the slide, right? By developing the students' prior knowledge, by exposing them to terms, right? As I mentioned, I took torts. I had no idea what privity is. It was something we talked about, but I hadn't previously been exposed to it. It was an old case. In fact, I don't even think it's important anymore. But the idea is that had I had a video to really explain it to me and maybe show me an example, I would have the prior knowledge to then interpret what the case is instead of being embarrassed in front of my peers like I was. Okay? So think of it as, what can we do to give students that prior knowledge? Now, if you're a professor or you have taught before, you may see things where students have misconceptions. Here's the next slide, right? Right? They might have misconceptions about a lot of stuff, and it might happen year after year after year. Why not make a video and clear that up? So you don't have to spend time clearing up the misconceptions. And misconceptions can linger a really long time. A really long time. Right? If you want students to think like a lawyer or engage in some activities like that, let's model it for them. Why don't we create a video where you work through a contract case, or whatever case you're working through, right? Let's model some of those behaviors because novices don't know how to do that. Experts do, and it's really hard to pick up on that stuff just through discussion. If we can give them a concrete example, which is what a lot of our contracts videos are based on, concrete examples, they're more likely to pick it up quicker, and when they come to class, it's sticking. It's becoming deep knowledge because not only is it something that has come in and it sits at the base, but they're also connecting it with these deeper concepts. You can have activities, group work, and that sort of stuff for the students to do. Another question about optimizing verbal content, which I've talked about at least twice already, is timing. There's a lot of videos and stuff out there that are an hour and 15 minutes long. That's way too long. Whoa. 20 minutes, right? That's the max. In fact, our videos are 10. And that's for practicality and financial or resource options. So if this idea that Ted's getting it right and it's 20 minutes, we've done it 10 minutes. Brain needs power to put it all together. It's not hard to create 2 10-minute videos instead of one 20-minute video, unless you give them M&Ms. But a lot of people that are creating videos, has anybody created videos for a flipped classroom where you've had a camera in the back and the lights and stuff? Is it a smooth process? What happens if I get sick and I need to come in and re-record something? Yeah, exactly. Oh God, that was perfect. I don't know her, and that was exactly what I needed to hear. Right? And you got to set up the lights and the video camera and stuff. And heaven forbid they're wearing the different suits. And they got 4 o'clock shadows, 8 o'clock, or whatever the heck it is. Right? Like, it's a pain in the butt. But if you have 10 minutes, at least if you're going to record these, they're easier to swap out. You're not putting them in front of the hot lights for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You're putting them in front of the hot lights for 10 minutes. You shouldn't be putting them in front of lights at all, but the idea is that you're managing cognitive load. It's a lot easier systematically for you to set it up for 10 minutes instead of 20 minutes. And you can't always give them M&Ms to take care of it. That's not to say you need to cover something super complex in just 10 minutes. We have a parole evidence rule. In fact, I think we have 4 videos on parole evidence rule. It's chunking. It's making it so that it's more easy to be digested by the learner and more able to be integrated with other information. So if you have a video and they say, I couldn't possibly do this in 10 minutes, then give them 3 or 4 10-minute videos. And it also, as you're writing the script, makes the professors think a little bit more. How am I wording the information? If I only have 10 minutes, right? How am I going to phrase it so that it's clear and interesting for the person that's absorbing the information? And how would I section it up logically? Right, like chapters. All right, so I'm going to get real technical. No, not real technical. I'm going to get technical. I'm going to tell you, how do we put our videos together? It may surprise you. How many people have seen some of the contract videos that we put together? Has anybody seen it? Just a handful, probably. Okay, cool. We don't use any video at all. Actually, you know what? I'll get to that in a second. So as I mentioned, we have, no, wrong way. There we go. We have a 5-step plan. 5 easy steps to create videos to flip your class with multimedia theory, cognitive load, depth of comprehension sort of baked in, at least at all, right? This is where the practical and the theory kind of comes into play. So the first step, decide how you want to deliver it, right? Model 1 is back in the classroom. We have a few people that do that. Back in the classroom is where, you know, like we'd have the video camera up and maybe some lights or something, and I'm teaching in the classroom environment. Super easy to do in terms of some of you have cameras in classrooms, you can just turn it on and have them give a lecture, right? But it's not optimal. What's one thing we're not using in that method? Visual, there you go, multimedia, right? As attractive as some of us are, as attractive as your professors are, they're not encoding that information, right, with verbal. You know, it's or somebody said it's attractive. What's that?
Speak for yourself.
Aside from John, nobody else can get away with this, right? Okay, so I don't like this model. Not only that, but it's very expensive. You have to have cameras, and you have to have lights, and the light goes out, somebody run the camera, and you have to have Final Cut, and you have to download it and do it, and da-da-da-da. It is, trust me, we tried it, very cost prohibitive. It's long, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, and you need so much stuff to make it work. Now, another model that's getting a little bit closer is this desk presentation that I talked about. And it can be done, I've seen it done a couple of ways. One is, so that's Sal Khan from Khan Academy doing one. I've seen people use a webcam to record themselves talking in front of the camera. Now that's cool because unlike the production piece where you got to set up the camera and the lights and all that crazy stuff, right? It's easy, everybody has, I mean, iPads have cameras in them, right? You can record it really simply. But again, when you're doing that desk presentation talking head, you're still talking head. You're not leveraging that multimedia principle that we just talked about on the side that was very important. Now you can kind of get away from that with the PowerPoint, right? Has anybody narrated PowerPoints before or keynotes before? Uses the record slideshow. That's actually way better. That's tons better because at least now you have that medium where you can use clip art, you can use pictures, you can use that stuff, and you're leveraging the audio verbal channel and the visual channel, right? So that's cool, it's close. But it's a pain in the ass to do it this way because it has to be done synchronously. You have to edit and advance the slides as you talk. That sucks because everybody screws up when you're talking. I've already screwed up like 10 times talking in front of you. And if you record it, and maybe PowerPoint can do this, but it's not always the best. Like if you need to go back and change something you said at the beginning, you have to redo it. Okay? And it's kind of a waste of time to do it that way. Talking, advancing the slides, and going. Like I said, it's a good model, it's good, and if it's what you got, it's what you got. I like it better than the back of the classroom model. But the model that we use is what I call the multimedia model. And if you can think of a better approach or a better name for this, tell me. This is where you do everything asynchronously. You put together your images with PowerPoint or Keynote. I use Keynote. That's what this has been done on. You do audio narration with a really good microphone, which we'll talk about in a second. And then you put it together using some video editing. You don't need Final Cut for this. You could use iMovie for this stuff, right? I think it comes installed on a lot of machines, or it's cheap. I use ScreenFlow for a Mac. Love ScreenFlow. If you're a technologist who has to do, here's how you use the software. It records the screen really easily, and it's like 70 bucks. And it's super awesome. So if you're doing visuals and demonstrations through click here, click here, click here, it's perfect for that. I think Camtasia does that as well. Or there are iPad apps. Now, I've never used Teach or Explain Everything. I heard they're really good. But they'll do very similar stuff to this, and it'll be done on this as opposed to done on a laptop. So step 2. I get fought a lot on this one. Write a script. You must write a script. You must write a script. You absolutely must write a script.
That's not spontaneous.
Yeah, except for John, because he can do this. He's ridiculously attractive.
He has a shark.
He has a shark. For no other reason than scripts help you understand what is it that I'm saying. Can a novice understand this? It can be proofread. So the cool thing about me is I don't know squat about a lot of law stuff. I know a lot about the statute of frauds right now, but right, like if you're explaining something to a novice, it has to be done deliberately. You have to know, will a novice understand this? Will a novice law student, okay, not a novice, novice law student. You can ensure that you're covering everything that you need to say. When I'm in front of you, honestly, you'll listen to the video that I put on YouTube. If you want to watch this again, you'll say, that is not the presentation you gave. I forgot a lot of stuff already, or I've rephrased it, right? But when it's put in a script, that's what you're saying, and that's what you're going to read. So it ensures that you get everything out that you need to.
What will you not then sound like you're reading from a script?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Actually, that's a great question. She asked, how do I know, or how do I not sound like I'm reading from a script? It takes an S-ton of practice. It's hard to do when you're just in it, but it's very important that you do it right, that you put some emotion into it. Because in blended environments, they don't see you, and some of the only way that you can sort of effectuate that enthusiasm for it, people will pick up on it, is through, hi, my name is Aaron. Today, we're going to talk about the statute of frauds. It's a common misperception among non-lawyers that a contract needs to be in writing in order to be enforceable, right? Like, it needs to be read with that emotion. Watch, like, Toy Story, when they do the narration, and, right, like they're in the studio. Like, watch that, man. They're, like, throwing their arms around. They're shouting at it. You'll sound ridiculous, but you have to do it. You absolutely have to do it. We'll talk a little bit more.
Well, it goes back to reading your kids' books. It's the same
Oh,
thing.
there you go.
It's the same exact thing. You're just getting into character when you're doing it.
Get into character.
It's the same exact,
Let me finish this. I do have a slide about recording the audio, and I'll tell you some more points about that. But the other thing is timing. Remember, everybody's got kind of a time limit when the ticker starts going, and then as soon as you go, you pique their interest, and then it starts to tail off after some time. When you write a script, you know how much time. How? 3 single-spaced pages is about 10 minutes. And that's a very good rule of thumb. So if you're going to write a script, just keep that in mind. Put everything out there. And if you're writing 15 pages, either shrink it or say, well, I've got 5 videos that I need to do. So it's a really good rule of thumb to go through in terms of timing. You save a ton of time because you know you're not just writing a script, going in there and talking really fast and trying to just get it all out there. You say, I got 3 pages. I know it's 10 minutes. And in terms of timing for recording, if you're going to go into a studio, it's about 2 times as long. If you have somebody who can set it up, you'll screw up and you'll redo some things. That's about 2 or 2.5 times as long to record it. So step 3 then. So you've decided what method, you've written your script, now we're going to talk about recording the audio. Now fortunately at the University of Utah, we have a sound studio. It's awesome. You walk in there and it just goes, and it's quiet, it's super quiet. And the audio, let me tell you, the original videos I did for contracts, I was in my bedroom, and I had my laptop open, and I took a pillow, and I took another pillow, and I put a pillow on top, and then I put a blanket over it. Dude, it was awesome. It was like building a fort, and then recording inside it. It still sounded like, but it was awful. Like when you record in a studio, you know it. And a lot of your universities will have some resource like this. You just got to ask. You just got to find out where it is. A lot of universities have public radio stations. Ask if you can go in and use their stuff. They might, if you're a university employee or a nonprofit or something like that. Use a studio if you can. If not, buy a Blue Yeti mic. It's a lot of either the kind of the cool looking retro stuff. Buy the best mic you can. Remember, the audio, the verbal channel drives everything. That's where the content is coming from. And if they can't hear you or it sounds like crap, it's distracting, and you're just increasing that cognitive load to make sense of what are they saying? Why does this sound crappy? Is that a car in the background? Is that a dog barking? Right? Get a good microphone. It is very, very, very important. So creating the visuals, PowerPoint, Keynote. As I'll show you here at the end, you'll see a sample of a video that we've put together. People often say, where do you get the little people from? You saw at the beginning I created that one where the guy had no hair and he kind of looked like me. It's expensive, but Shutterstock, iStock Photo, if you use Illustrator or any vector editing tools, it is the way to go. It is cost prohibitive to hire a visual designer for that stuff. I looked, they cost a fortune. But for $250 a month, which seems like a lot, but if you can roll in other people, marketing departments and stuff, you can get awesome, awesome visuals. They can be those people, they can be other people, they can be whatever the case is. So leverage that. Find iStock photos. Unlimited downloads, it's 25 downloads a day, but I have yet to max that out. Right? Download these things and get a library put together for it. Yeah, so this side, Shutterstock, iStock Photo, those are places, the vector graphics are what you're looking for, and they're customizable too. The picture of me with the little cartoon guy, I actually had a cartoon guy with hair, and I had to take it off. So, I think it looks better that way. Another thing, and I know there was a presentation, what's her name? She did like a Hollywood script writing.
Jill Smith.
Yes, Jill Smith. It has a really good presentation. She did it at Legal Ed Web, that presentation.
She's doing it tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Go then, because she, it's not, mine's simplistic. This is an expert trying to teach novice and not keeping that in mind. But what this allows you to do is as you have your script, right, you have your script, you're basically segmenting it in chunks so that you know what's going on what slide. What visual will be up when I create this slide. I have it so that I go back and forth between the visuals and the script, and I will create a slide. And you can see by those little slashy doohickeys after after some of the paragraphs, that's where the slide changes. So it gives you a slide transfer thing. So if you do decide to do desk presentations, if you don't want to do the multi-media model, at least now you know when you're transferring and when you're hitting the slide exchange button. But the cool thing about this is that as you're trying to think about what visual, what word or two words am I going to use to represent on this page, you can kind of read it and see, okay, I see what's going on this slide. And you'll find yourself editing the slide because you might have a paragraph down here and a paragraph here that is the same thing. You move it up, you change it a little bit, and so on. So then, step 5 obviously is to combine. You have an audio track that you recorded at the lab. You have the visuals in PowerPoint or Keynote, which can be exported as images, right? Just as the slides or as a movie or something like that. Then you put them together. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of simple video editing software. This is a shot of ScreenFlow. Where you have the audio, you can see the audio on the bottom. The visuals are on, the audio's on top, visuals are on the bottom. And I'm just extending the slide to be shown as long as I'm talking about it. You have your script, you know exactly where the voice changes and where the slide changes. You don't need Final Cut to do this.
You can do iMovie, right?
You can do it in iMovie, absolutely.
iDVD.
You can, any of that stuff. I use, like I said, I use ScreenFlow. You can do it in Captivate, iMovie. You could use Final Cut if you really wanted to, but it's kind of overkill. It's like Bazooka. But it's easy. A lot of people have some linear movie editing software on their computer, so if faculty want to do this, they can even venture in that way. So there you have it, right? Super easy. This is easy. This is easy.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to show you this really quick. I thought the next slide was something else, but I'll show you this. So this is an example of a statute of frauds video we put together.
This unit introduces the statute of frauds. It's a common misconception among non-lawyers that an agreement needs to be in writing in order to be legally enforceable. In fact, putting to one side practical questions of proof, most oral agreements are every bit as enforceable as a written contract. However, for several specific kinds of contracts, the law requires the agreement to be memorialized in some kind of a writing, though not necessarily a formal written contract, before it can be enforced. The law involved here is not common law case decisions, but rather statutory law. And although the statutes can differ in their details, all states have enacted some kind of statute for the prevention of frauds, which is typically shortened to the phrase statute of frauds.
Okay, so that's a quick clip of something, and a couple things I want to point out. One, the voice is a little bit more. I mean, like I said, I mean this was much more muted. It doesn't have to be like ridiculously animated like I was doing, but you have to realize that because there's no social cues of them seeing you, you do have to enunciate. You do have to be a little more excited than you normally would when you're creating it. Second, it's okay to leave an image up there if you need to leave it up there for a little longer. I had the picture of the contract and then the I do and that sort of stuff. It's okay. You're giving them time to process it. If things are changing, they're attention shifting. And again, attention is a whole other thing that we can talk about, but you want to control their attention. Focus on the important stuff. And three, there's not a lot of animations. You shouldn't make it move. Again, a whole other line of stuff with should it move or not. But the rule of thumb is if it doesn't need to move, don't make it move. An engine, heart and circulatory system, demonstrating how to do a high jump, those are all important for understanding what it is. Don't make things whizzle across the screen. Don't use Prezi. I'm going to say it. Probably some people like, don't use Prezi. It makes somebody throw up eventually. Prezi is great if you know what you're doing. It tells a nonlinear story, right? And it's great. Some people, it's spinning all over the place, and it's not important, and I'm dizzy, I'm trying to get my bearings, and you've already moved slides, so that I've seen some bad Prezi presentations. Okay, this is a ton of work. This is an ass ton of work. This is a lot of work, right? Why are we asking faculty to do this? How am I supposed to do research in this and teach? If you were in Michelle's presentation the other day, I advocated for an instructional designer, or instructional technologist, or somebody who can help with this. And I really do feel that there needs to be a liaison with the faculty to help understand these things. There's a lot of science in here. There's a lot of what do I need to understand. We're not going to put our faculty through a mini course on instructional design, nor should they have to go through one. I'm there to help them. I'm there to help them understand what's important. They schedule time with me, and again, this is for presentations, not for animation or multimedia or anything. This is classroom stuff where you can leverage multimedia principles and the narration principles and all of that stuff. So it is a lot of work. But having somebody, whether it's somebody in the library or a dedicated instructional designer, you might have a program at your institution if you're at a big university. They likely have an instructional design program. Find out who the director of that program is and say, I need some cheap labor, right? You're not going to quite have the trust built, but if you can get a good student or two, you might be able to have somebody who can offload some of that work. We've actually had success with it. Some faculty may not be as willing to work with a master's student in instructional design, but try it. It sure beats hiring somebody at, $80,000 a year or whatever they're going for these days. All right. Next slide, please. I want to say it's worth it. So all of our videos are on YouTube. If you search for my name on YouTube right now, they'll come up. In 2 years, with very minimal advertising, we've had almost 250,000 views on one set of videos, and we've had almost 1 million minutes watched. I clipped this yesterday, so it's pretty. You can even see when were finals?
Oh,
yeah, so you can kind of see there.
That spikes.
And this is just some feedback from students. I have no idea who they are. Funny story about our contracts videos. I put them on YouTube just because I didn't have a place to put them. And I needed to embed them in Canvas, which is the course management system we use. I put them on YouTube thinking, oh, what the hell. And all of a sudden, the hits started to go up beyond what our enrollment was. And people were sending me messages saying, our whole class thanks you. I really wish my professor's explanations were this clear. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? Like, it's just, going through the steps and doing it the way that I suggested, people really like how well they work because they're not trying to do too much. They're trying to build a baseline level of knowledge and a base understanding for the students so that when they come into class, they're more prepared. Now, all I have are anecdotal evidence. Professor Deborah Threedy, who's been teaching contracts for 30 years, has said that she feels that her students are a little bit better informed when they come into class and she does some Socratic dialogue with them. She's also tried to leverage these to flip and do more activities, have them look at contracts, have them talk about it, and she says it's been working well. But it still requires the professor to understand what that role is and to implement it correctly. Because we do have one professor who is teaching contracts that did a poor job in using them. And the students heard from the other students that they worked well in the other two courses. So it's a two-way street. These things aren't magic. They don't always work. It does require a little bit on the professor. Oh, I can help you. If you have scripts and you want to make something, send it to me. I'll do it. Honestly, I will do it for free. Well, not completely for free. This is a good segue. I will do it so long as you allow us to use it for our project called the First Year, especially if it's a first year script. This is something that we put together at the law school. Yes, we coded it. Yes, we put it together. Where we're putting all of the learning materials. Every contracts video can be found in here. Now, one cool thing about YouTube is that people can see them and they can get to them. But in terms of academics, what can't you do with YouTube? I want you to answer this. What can't you do on YouTube? That's nice to have.
You're asking me.
Yes.
Assessment.
Awesome. We planned that. Yeah, assessment. Right? You can't put quizzes and stuff on there. Quizzes are great to help them understand, is this knowledge what I'm getting? It helps clear up misconceptions. So we created the First Year.
We need some more M&Ms.
Want some more as you're going, take it, because I can't bring it with me back to Utah. So this is free. This is something we're putting together. It's highly in beta. But what we're doing is you can create an account for it, and it has some basic legal research, critical thinking, contracts, and we've got slots for your course if you want to do it. This is where we're putting it. We have some gamification elements. We have quizzes in here. So if you go in and look at what contracts videos we, of course. Hold on, let me look. I heard these computers are not optimal for showing videos and stuff. So you can go in, you can take a look at all the contracts videos we have through here. The students progress them. When they pass the quiz, they get a little check here. Well, let's talk about unilateral contracts. They go in, they have a video to watch, they have a discussion if they need to ask some questions, but then they also have a quiz, right? We have any contracts experts in here? Anybody? Well, let me just try it.
Yeah.
So they just go through, it slides through, it shows them the progress bar. They're going to pick one with most questions. Let's see if I'm any good at guessing.
Oh.
According to my expertise, you only got one right there.
That's correct. Wow, I'm horrible. But you can see, right? They can try it again. This isn't as fancy as some assessment systems I've heard of and seen, but at least it's an opportunity for us to watch the video, formatively assess them, because the quiz is based on the video. And if you want to prove mastery and say that you at least remember it, again, we're not asking these videos to do the high-level stuff, to facilitate deep comprehension. That's what the class is for. This quiz is just to help reinforce what it was they learned in the video. And they can try again. There's obviously a ton of things we would like to do with this. We'd like to have analytics to the extent that the questions get harder if you get smarter. We've had some ideas for part of my thesis project is providing a place for students to build cognitive maps about the information, right? Construction. It's a way to maybe get at deep learning through non-person mediated stuff. So there's a lot of things that this could go, but it's hard to do that when you don't have content for it. So if you're interested in helping writing even one script for the First Year, email me. My information's up there, and let's talk about it. Your name will be on it. We'll make sure everybody knows who wrote it, and I think you'll be doing an awesome thing for the community. So I'm sorry I went a little bit longer. I only have 5 minutes for questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If I can turn my water off. Oh, wow. Jeez, I did a great job.
Isn't this asking, you say it's a lot of work, there's a lot of work on the video side, but also doesn't this fall down if they don't do a lot of work, what they're going to do in class as well?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, to flip a classroom requires more than just creating videos. It requires a holistic view of it. And as I mentioned, I have that active learning one where if this then would segue into another presentation after an hour break and an activity. Actually, I have an activity, but I only have an hour to do it, so I couldn't do it. But yes, I mean, it is. And the professor that wants to flip a class has to understand that it goes beyond creating videos. Not only that, they have to be smart about how they're creating videos. Not only that, they have to understand what are the implications of the student watching videos. Is it replacing lecture? Is it providing prior knowledge? How do you engage that prior knowledge? How do you reinforce that through activity in the classroom? So yes, not only is it a ton of work for the people creating it, this presentation was geared a little bit more towards faculty just to say, yes, this is hard, but it requires buy-in on the other side as well. This is for a reason.
So how do you get faculty buy-in then? I mean,
Bribe them. No, I mean, so if you're interested in writing scripts, that's all I have you do. That's all you have to do. I'll take care of the rest. So at least from that idea, that's sort of enticing to say, well, my name will be on these videos and so on and so on. But you know, right now, when you come at them with the, oh, you have to think about how this impacts your classrooms, it can get scary. But that's why an instructional designer is nice to have to help with that. I have a professor who we're starting to flip some of her courses, and I take on some of that stuff because I do know about pedagogy beyond video design and that sort of stuff. So I can help create exercises or simulations and so on. Again, that's talked about in the other presentation. But to be honest with you, you're not going to convert somebody that doesn't want to do it. You won't. Deborah's very excited. We have Terry Kogan, who's another professor, who's very excited about it. They wanted to do it. I struck when the iron is hot. We now have a few that have seen them do it, and these are senior professors. Tell me about it. And the first thing I say is, don't flip your whole class. Do one. Do one lecture. Do one unit. I'll create 1, 2, 3, how many ever videos. And you just take it for a test drive. Just take it for a test drive, and that helps.
If students are finding your videos through YouTube, do you have any information on those videos about effective ways to include them in a class? If students are leaving feedback saying, I wish my teacher did this.
That's a great. So I have some cognitive science videos on there too for how to, kind of, but no, that's a great idea.
Per topic, if you said, hey, go to the FirstYear.org to see how this was used in the classroom, and it was awesome.
That's an awesome idea. I will credit you for that. That's good, yeah.
What kind of training do you do with your faculty to get good scripts?
And a lot of hands-on. I proofread all of them for novice comprehension, so if something's unclear, I will tell them. Use a lot of examples. Use concrete examples. If remember, this is just for the base understanding to sort of see how it works. Novices need concrete examples. And students really love our examples because every single one of them will have little stick figures, you know, offering acceptance, exchanging gifts, or talking, or whatever the case is. It takes some time. Deborah is a screenwriter, so it comes naturally to her. And Terry is not, the furthest from it. And the students, towards the end of the semester, said, I know which ones Professor Kogan did, and I know which ones Professor Fruity did. So, you know, and it was fine. But through my intervention and in helping and sort of being that intermediary, you could craft it a little bit and say, Terry, we need some examples. Give me another example, and I'll plug that in there. So it's practice, like the voice stuff. It takes practice. You just gotta get in the groove, and once they do it, they'll figure it out. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you came across any course credit issues. I had one faculty member asking me about, he wants to flip his entire corporation's course.
Well,
he was afraid that if he asked the students to spend however many minutes watching prior to class and then class, then we'd have to extend it.
We have never had a complaint. These videos, and that's the other good thing about these videos being 10 minutes, is that most chapters have just 10 minutes or 12. You know, there's some fudging, right? So no, we've never had an issue with the students asking for it or asking for extra credit. You know, obviously there's ABA rules about credit in general, meaning that students can't take any distance courses or anything to be considered for the first year. And it's what, 30%? I don't know, something like that. So we're being very conservative with that, but I think the students appreciate this. All the students that I've talked to have really liked having assessments and having the videos because they're so lost, right? They're in a room, a dark room, looking for the light switch. And I like to think of these videos as giving them a flashlight so that they can at least go and look in the corners where it is. And then finally, when they hit it, they can flip the light and, oh, great. So that's how I view it, and most of them view it that way as well. Did everybody finish the M&Ms? You're probably just ready to go to the next one because you fueled up on it. All right, thanks guys, I appreciate it.
I've always had a Twitter, I never hear that.
The problem is, like, people talk about
That's a good question. So, a lot of topics, but there's a lot of